Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've got another book review for you today. It's an audio book review and we're going to be jumping into The Rule of Two, the second book in the Darth Bane trilogy, written by Drew Karpyshyn, as is the entire trilogy, and voiced again by Jonathan Davis. Jonathan Davis is a brilliant audiobook voice actor, narrator, because he's very good at sort of changing up his voice to sound like other characters without it being too over the top for female characters or anything like that. He does a very good change up of style in all of his characters, rather than just one person sounding a little bit grumpy or a little bit feminine. He's very good at that. He's got a really nice speaking voice as well, a nice low baritone at times. But we're going to jump into it, obviously. As ever, do like and subscribe so you don't miss any content for the channel. It does help me and the channel out. And so we'll jump into it. So The Rule of Two is the second book in the Darth Bane trilogy. Straight off the bat, it's a very good book. I really recommend jumping into the entire trilogy. I have finished it all now, and it's taken me a while to get some reviews done because there's been a lot going on. As you know, life tends to throw things at you when you're busy. So I actually went on a bit of an audiobook tear. I've listened to 4 full audiobooks before cracking on with this next review that we're talking about now. So I've got quite a lot of reviews ahead of me. But The Rule of Two is a brilliant book. I will say straight away, if you're going to jump into the books, personally, I think that the audiobooks really enrich these stories because it's back in the Old Republic, so it's easier to immerse yourself when somebody's kind of giving you all of the resources, like the sound effects and the different voices and stuff like that, just because when you're reading yourself you have to kind of imagine that, and depending on what level of reader you are or that kind of thing, that can kind of change the level of immersion, at least for me. So I definitely think that these are worth an audiobook listen, but there's a lot of technical stuff going on in the book as well that I think kind of like Plagueis, Darth Plagueis, if you are into Star Wars, you know a lot of the concepts, then it won't be too difficult for you, but you will have to take some time digesting some of the the terms you've never heard before and kind of like really digesting them, because there is some brilliant lore in these books, into Sith culture and the teachings and stuff like that, but also the Old Republic and kind of world building that time, because we've not seen it on screen. So it's very good, but I would recommend listening to the audiobooks. As ever, the music's always brilliant. It's always John Williams music, and to be honest, it's kind of the same like handful of songs that they use in all the audiobooks, but they use them at particular times. So when there's a tense fighting sequence, it will typically be the same one. It would be like, for example, Duel of Fates or something, even though it's not, the book isn't necessarily about, the Phantom Menace or anything like that, but it works, it really does. So the second book picks up after the first book has just finished, so it's kind of, it kind of walks out of that book and then it kind of jumps a few years early on to sort of when Zana, the apprentice, Darth Zana, Bane's apprentice, is a little bit older, so it's not got all of those younger years, so she's kind of like a late teenager now. But it does pick up just after things kind of leave off in the first books, just kind of tie in the books and show you where the state of the galaxy is. And it's done really well. It doesn't dwell on it, so you're not just getting a carry-on of the first book. It does jump into straight away what's next on the horizon for Darth Bane and his apprentice. So I really loved the first book because it built it from a world with all we know about the Old Republic is it's essentially like the New Times, just different people, but there's slight differences. There's still ships, there's still lightsabers, blasters, all that kind of stuff, and culture is very much the same on many planets. but I really felt that the first book really built on Sith culture that we've not really had before. The second book does build on that, but it builds on the rule of two specifically, which is really good because in the modern era that's what the Sith adopted. So from this point onwards, Darth Bane is kind of why Plagueis and Sidious, they do get to where they go, because he refines the rules of the Sith to say, look, let's change how it's meant to be so that we ultimately will be in power for longer. So he teaches Xana various things along the way. Obviously the idea is that someday he should teach her enough, and if she's powerful enough she'll surpass him, kill him, take over, that kind of thing, like Sidious did. The idea being that if she can't best him, that he needs to pick someone else, because it's more of a, in this book, it's more of a, the Sith culture will die out, rather than Sidious. It's a little bit more of a personal greed thing, which is a big part of the Sith culture. Although with Sidious's plan, he didn't really consider it going wrong for the bigger picture of the Sith. He kind of wanted to be in charge because his master had, Plagueis had taught him all he could teach him, and he was weak. So he wanted to kind of carry on. With Darth Bane, it's the same principles, but if any of them die out, the Sith die out with them. So it's because all of the Sith have just been killed. If you haven't, if you missed my first review, it's Darth Bane had a hand in it. That's why they're all dead. Because he basically said, right, you're not doing it the right way. I'm going to just start, wipe the board clean, start from scratch. And then he picks up Xana as the apprentice at the end of the book after that. So, we're starting from scratch in the Rule of Two. And then the book is about essentially like, now he's established this Rule of Two, and he wants to get Xana up to speed on all of the Sith teachings. He also then wants to expand his knowledge, so obviously that means he needs to discover holocrons, Sith holocrons, things like that. And one of the big kind of aspects of the book is that he goes to find one which, in doing so, he gets something attached to him that feeds on dark side energy, but it's a bit of a gift and a curse. It's like they're called obelisks, and their energy fuels him to be essentially even more of a powerful dark side user, and their shells are like impenetrable for like blaster fire and stuff like that. So it's like armor, but it sucks life from him, and it sucks kind of like his actual intelligence and focus, because it kind of focuses on his rage and stuff. So it kind of blinds him to some stuff. And we work through the book various things. There's some smaller characters, as there always is, that it kind of builds around in ways to help you build the bigger picture of like the crescendo at the end and stuff. But it doesn't dwell on them too much, so it's good. It's not one of those trilogies where there's a lot of filler. It's actually like the complete opposite. It's so rich in lore about the Sith and the Rule of Two and the ways that we now know Plagueis and Sidious lived by. But in terms of the book's purpose for like Xana, it's getting her to a level where she is kind of like the Dooku to Sidious. She's at a level where she's a masterful Sith, but she needs her master to still teach her the rest. And obviously he strategically is not going to just teach her everything as soon as he can. He needs to keep her building at a certain pace. But then, because of everything going on, the Jedi catch wind of them. I don't want to, with these reviews, I don't want to ruin the story too much in terms of like giving it all away. But it comes to a point where there's a big crescendo, and in order to try and complete various tasks that each side is trying to complete, they all get together in a place where Darth Bane just absolutely wrecks so many Jedi, but then in a last ditch attempt, he uses his he has like a force lightning, but like it's like insanely powerful, and a Jedi who he's not like a lightsaber fighter, he's like he channels energy, and it like helps shield Jedi and helps them move faster, this and the other. He's kind of like he's like a bonus multiplier in a video game, but he doesn't actually like fight himself. When just before he's about to die, he like puts up a force bubble around Bane and him, so that when he fires his lightning, it actually like when Darth Bane fires his lightning, it comes back at him and severely harms him. And then it puts us in a place where a healer that is referred to in the first book, they go to his planet, and he was reluctant to help Bane, and Bane kind of swung it so that he didn't have a choice. But then his daughter, who he basically, Darth Bane said, "I'll kill her if you don't," she's gone. So when they go back, the healer, the healer is like, "You've got nothing on me now. You can kill me if you want, whatever." Xana, is like, she convinces him, again I won't spoil too much, but she convinces him to help Bane. But at this point now, she needs Bane because he has teachings that she needs. So like, it's in her best interest to save her master on many fronts. But at the same time, now he's so weakened, she's kind of fighting with, what does this mean for us? Because I'm kind of in charge in the interim. And she pulls off this absolutely brilliant twist at the end, a masterful plan to kind of keep the story alive, keep the Ruler 2, the Sith alive. But again, I won't give away too much, but there's some characters along the way that kind of, they play their role in coming all the way back around. So for example, at the end of the first book, the boy that was her brother or cousin, or I forget the relation, but before she was picked by Bane, that she severed his hand, and that was like a kind of like, I'm not going to kill you, I'm going to sever your hand, but you will live. It was a decency thing. That character comes back around in the end to be included because he's a healer as well, and he happens to be caught up in it somehow with the Jedi because he saw Darth Bane and stuff on the planet, when supposedly all the Sith were wiped out, blah blah blah, and they're mixed up all in it together, and there's a big twist at the end that help them go undetected. I'll leave it there just because it's such a brilliant trilogy, and I don't want to dive into it too much to ruin it, because with the bits I've given you, I've kind of given you the premises, and there is still that mystery, so you can go and enjoy it yourselves. But in terms of the singular book, I will rate it a little bit differently in terms of the overall trilogy. First of all, because I finished the trilogy, that kind of helps me with perspective in hindsight, looking back on the books, of course. But the first book is fantastic in terms of, all of the audiobook extras you get. So the music, the voiceover, all that kind of stuff. Sure, but the actual story is fantastic. The world building, fantastic. Second story, second book is very good as well. I do think that in terms of the trilogy, the first and second books are the strongest. The third book to me isn't as strong, but that's simply because so much has been built to that we're in a sort of situation where it's inevitable. Not inevitable in terms of like we know exactly what's going to happen, but it's inevitable what's going to need to happen, and the story kind of twists and turns, and at times you think, okay, when are we going to get to, when's it going to happen? And the end of the book is, there's obviously again there's a big crescendo because it's the ending of a trilogy, but in terms of individual books, I think the first two take it for me. So I forget what score I gave the first book. It was a brilliant book though. So like with the second book, I would definitely go, for me, a rating of 8 or 9 out of 10, which I believe I gave the first book an 8 or a 9, because they're fantastic books. I do think that the Darth Bane story is something that I doubt that Disney would go there, obviously, but I do think that it's something that would be fantastic on the screen to build this kind of stuff, because there's a lot of lore, there's a lot of teachings, readings from manuscripts talking about why lightsaber combat is, designed the way it is, lightsabers designed the way they are to, take advantage, what's the disadvantage, the cultural significances, all these different things that, like, we know a lot about the Jedi, not everything, but we know a lot about them because they get a lot of screen time. But the Sith, they've always been very mysterious on the screen, of course. So it's really good to see this kind of content because you get a lot of lore. Like for example, Xana is a Sith sorcerer. That's her like natural affinity. So like some, Jedi are, they're more about healing. Some Jedi are more about fighting warriors, and some Jedi are more about mind tricks and force controls and things like that. And Darth Bane is, he's an absolute brute of a guy, so he's more of a warrior. Xana is more of a sorcerer, so she does kind of like dark magics and stuff, kind of like Mother Talzin, but it's still dark side Sith dark magic. But yeah, I definitely would recommend getting stuck into this trilogy to anyone who is a big Star Wars fan. But honestly, because of the way the first book is built, actually my mum has listened to all 3 books and she loved them as well, and she is a very minimal working knowledge of Star Wars, so for it to world build so eloquently that she was able to take it all on board and enjoy it, I think that kind of speaks volumes. Because on the other end of the scale, I'm a huge I'm a Star Wars nut. I'm a massive fan, so I know a hell of a lot more of the intricacies and the concepts, so that a lot of it's not alien to me anyway. And I thought it was amazing. I thought it was very enjoyable. I definitely would, if you're going to jump in, go for the whole trilogy. Don't just read 1 or 2 or pick or choose. Go in order chronologically. I do think it enhances the story. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this review, guys, and I hope it's informative. Like I say, I'll be bringing you a 3rd book review, as well as some newer books. I listened to Brotherhood recently, the new book about Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker during kind of the interim between The Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars, episode 1 and 2. So that was brilliant. Can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.